Through the hotel last time we got one of
Okay. Okay, everybody, can you hear me at the back? Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. I might put my mask up if I'm walking around, but as I come to talk to you, I will put my mask down. If I have not done that, because I need to get the muscle memory for that, please do put a hand out, do not approach, because that's going to be quite key. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. Wow, it's very rare you get to actually see people in the flesh. I now see you properly as well. It's not going to end well once you get there. Can see you properly. Is the mic still working? Okay. Right, Mike. No worries, I can whisper across 8 fields anyway. So thank you for joining us here today. Here is Wellbeing Lancashire, and what we wanted to do today is to share our passion, but more importantly is to explore the conversation regarding wellbeing for Lancashire. Before we do that, just a few housekeeping bits and bobs from Celia. So we just want to make sure that we've got your brass tacks taken care of.
That's it. Welcome everyone. If anyone needs the toilets, they're through there. There's sanitizer on every single table for you, plus sanitizer in the corridor if you can all use that before and after. Wi-Fi code, if any of you want that, it's WB guest, and then the code is 12345678. Very, very complicated code to remember, so just go in your keypad right across. If there's a fire, no fire plan today, but if there is one, there's 2 exits down there, one of them down there, and 4 exits in this building, so we're totally covered by the fire. That's all.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and if you can keep your visors on, obviously for the...
Absolutely. Brilliant. Can you hear me now?
One, two. That's going to answer the theatre of the day, isn't it? Crikey.
Right, pull the mic like that, then it's the right volume. So, thank you for joining us. There's some incredible faces around this table, around this room, if you will, and it's greatly appreciated you're taking the trouble to join us, you're taking the trouble to come and to share, I think, a conversation with us which we need to have. The world is incredibly different, and what motivated us to set up Wellbeing Lancashire was, at the beginning of the crisis landing, was the appearance of almost what felt like a PTSD environment and how the world was changing, and significant concerns really, and we're looking at it from a commercial point of view, dealing with businesses, that there's a lot of businesses, a lot of business owners who are in a challenging place, but equally, there are a lot of business owners who had solutions as well, which was out there. And the wake-up call was whispers we were getting regarding impacts on suicide rates in the county, and what we see presented to ourselves from Q Thinking perspective, and then having the joy of building the alliance through Ask for Help. The conversations becoming less on the business and more about the person. We had the information on the business, and it was a case of the conversations we had in surgeries was, how are you? Wow. Then the floodgates opened, didn't they? So clearly something was not ideal in the county that we were seeing and that we were hearing. That's from a commercial point of view, but businesses are made up of people ultimately, aren't they? organisations are made up of people, real human beings, your friends, your mums, your dads, your brothers, your siblings, your kids, and anybody else as well. And that was incredibly powerful because people, in a lot of cases, were crumbling and were having quite a lot of challenges. But at the same time, we were seeing an amazing array of providers of wellbeing services who were itching to help to shape up like an army. So from Wellbeing Lancashire perspective, we thought, well, we need to have a brew, a digital coffee, basically. And it started like that, to truth be known, just by a passion for how do we start to shape ourselves. Spoke with Celia, then spoke with Cheryl and a couple of other people from the surgeries that we did. And from that, it became apparent that actually there was a passion to have the conversations. From that coffee shop, it became clear that actually together we are stronger. If we looked at it not as a me, but as a we were able to suddenly start to shape some forms and to create some form of an organisation. And the coffee shop, I guess, quickly shifted from a coffee shop to a collaborative alliance. Well, that's all well and good, but it's just hot air, isn't it? We're not actually doing anything. So we set ourselves about 80 days ago a bit of a 90-day plan, which included to try and shape up a digital presence, to have this event, to really look at how wellbeing is quite different than what it was, but also the awareness of wellbeing is quite different. Only this week, we're lucky with leading the Scale Up Surgeons programme for Live Boost, 2.0, Lancashire County Council. So we do cohorts of businesses. But what's become apparent in the cohorts, and this is 3 cohorts this week, one of manufacturers, one digital businesses, and one of a bit of a potpourri of all sorts. The theme of wellbeing, the wake-up call was in the first peer-to-peer, talking with a member who's in session, and he said, he looked absolutely shattered. He said, I've been up since 5 this morning doing emails. Dave, you were in the session, weren't you? Mm-hmm. You were in the session. Yeah. And he'd been doing his emails, he'd done a proposal, writing a bid and everything. He looked exhausted. It was 10 o'clock and he went, he almost crumbled, didn't he? He said, I'm still in my underwear. And you're like, wow, this is supposed high-performing people. Yes, high-performing to a degree, but we hijacked that meeting, didn't we? We did the Wheel of Life, which some of you will be familiar with, which is looking at your holistic approach to life. And it was quite telling. It was quite telling that it was great. I think you were grateful for that conversation, weren't you? As were a few others. And Dave, I hope you don't mind me pointing, but you were in that session.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's very touching to be quite fair in some respects. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think he was glad that he had that conversation as well.
And that conversation doesn't get had too often. And I guess the point we're saying is, but the solutions out there, and I think the solution was offered in that session, but the solutions which are out there, what we seem to try to do is to see how can we assemble an alliance which can potentially have some solutions. That's why we're here to that degree. There's a PTSD, there was a link to ask for help, the coffee shop, to where we are now with Wellbeing Lancashire. But we want to be what is wanted, but crucially want to be what is needed for the region. So for the 90-day plan, we've kind of got ourselves a bit of an MVP, a minimum viable product of where we think we need to start to shape up. But we really need not just ask the audience, well, we do need to ask the audience, but we also need to look at what's actually out there. We're not all practitioners, we're incredibly passionate. We're going to do whatever we're going to do anyway, it's going to happen, but we would much rather do it with the brighter people in the room, to be totally blunt. And to be fair, to be fortunate, we have got the brighter people in the room here with us. So what I'd just like to do is just to allow a couple of other gang from Wellbeing Lancashire. I'm not even giving you the name, am I? Sorry, I'm Jason, J. Kingston from Cube Thinking. Can I pass the mic to you in a safe way, in a distance way? Is that okay? Right, so I'll pass over to Lee first. No, we do ladies first, but I saw you first, Lee, to be fair.
Yeah, so it's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm Luke Chambers of Decentralised Workplace Wellbeing, and ultimately my role and my passion within Wellbeing Lancashire is to look at the digital strategy and the data strategy and start to look at how we can really start to turn the tide. We are in a challenging time at the moment, and in so many ways, it's really the time for us as a county and across the Northwest in so many ways to start to really look at what we can do to amplify wellbeing start to turn the tide on the health inequalities we face, the fact that redundancy and challenges will come from an economic perspective going forward. And really, we knew that in this challenging time, the most important thing for us to do is to have a foundation, a platform to be able to deliver wellbeing, but also to strategize wellbeing and understand that if we can implement a number of different areas and start to look how we can fuse social enterprise, public health, business and local government to look at ultimately as a collective, the values are not always the same, the missions and intentions won't always be aligned, but there's definite synergies there that we can benefit from to amplify what we can do across the county. And in a lot of ways, we looked out to the landscape and what was available, and you, the people in this room today, I'm incredibly appreciative that you've taken the time to be with us. A big part of that is simply because we need to understand in this room, we have members of almost every body across the county. You are in the best position to be able to assist us, to advise us what's already available, what is already happening, but more crucially, what isn't happening at the moment, what can we really grow into and also start to provide for the companies, for the communities and for the individuals across Lancashire. So once again, we have a great collection of people in this room, and I again just want to thank you for attending today.
Over to Cheryl.
I'll pass on to Cheryl.
Thank you, everyone. For me, I think it's just a massive thank you for all coming today. I think when we sat down and we said we wanted to do Roundtable, I think if we, for 1 second, I thought we'd get the people here today that we have. Well, yeah, it's going to be a great conversation, and I think that we'll get a lot of information that we can take forward and put in a great framework so that we can work together going forward for the benefit of Lancashire and the benefit of the people and the businesses in Lancashire. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Cheryl. Who's behind me? I'm going to pass this to Celia. You made eye contact.
Yeah, just to say, the reason we've chosen today is that the Wellbeing Farm was created from my personal experience of work-related stress and burnout, and I wanted to create an environment that's incredibly different. It was very, very different from your normal venue and normal kind of corporate events venue. And I'm very pleased to say that this is actually the first official corporate event to be held this year in this venue, because we launched in January, then we hit with COVID, and so I'm so grateful for you all for actually physically turning up today. It's really amazing to get you all here today in an actual physical event.
Here. Also, just on that theme, there's a video photographer, as you may have been aware there. Nobody sent any objections in the email, just noting that, but just to draw attention to the fact that you're definitely happy for the images to be represented, or however you say that. Also, we'll do some video testimonials afterwards if you would like. That would be absolutely fantastic too. By all means, if you're a tweeter or a LinkedIn active person or whatever, by all means use the hashtag Wellbeing Lancashire. So I know some people are keen on the tweeting world. So I'm going to pass you over now to our Emma, who's made eye contact.
Pardon not to, it's so engaging. Thanks everyone. I mean, there's not much left to say after Lee very well articulated what Wellbeing Lancashire is trying to achieve. My company's In-House Health. We're a health tech company that provides organisations with health data from their employees to engage them and strategise. I've been a nurse for 18 years, left NHS a few years ago because I wasn't making a difference because of all the stuff up here and what's going on down here. That's why I wanted to become a part of Wellbeing Lancashire. I wanted to join it together, wanted to plug the gaps to help the people that need the help. I'm so excited for today, and again, thanks for making time out of your diaries to be with us.
Thank you. Right, so let's roll our sleeves up. Going to start the conversation going. If you do feel engaged, and at the end, if you think you understand behind what we're talking about, we'll get a big banner
outside afterwards. We're permitting, I think it's forecast to be half decent. So if you do stand behind what we're thinking, what we're saying, what we're aiming for, it'd be wonderful to get a picture of you behind that banner. That would be fantastic. Wouldn't it be brilliant to see to all the counties we're facing into this storm, and actually we're not going to be beaten by this. We're going to use some innovation, we're going to use some digitisation, and we're going to get to a place where we need to be. We don't know all the rules, but if we, I guess from a Wellbeing Lancashire point of view, if we can be a bit of a Wi-Fi for wellbeing in the region, similar to you've got Digital Lancashire for the digital plumbing, then that's a start of a 10 for us to get to. But the conversation we want to have from a roundtable point of view is, firstly, let's just get ourselves and let's hear what your thoughts are. I want to listen more than I want to talk, if that's okay. So what brought you here today? So you've come out in a world of everybody's on Zoom, in a world where it's so much easier to click on a link than to have got in your cars, taking the trouble to drive down, get a sugar rush from the brownies. What brought you here today, Peter?
Trying to connect the things to the agendas that we have at work. Do you want me to hold that?
Is that what I can hear? Are you?
So, yeah, so we basically work with, we have two strands to our organisation, Inspira, which is kind of young people and adults. And just looking at the agenda as things are going at the moment, trying to get young people particularly prepared and mentally tough to deal with the situation. It seems like a really good environment to come and sort of engage in the conversation. Plus, Stuart, who works for Inspira as well, it kind of raised on to my attention that it would be really good to have a member of the senior team from Inspira here as well, because it's a really important conversation. So it's thanks to Stuart as well.
And thanks to you too. Thank you. Annette, we've spoken before on manufacturing type things, so it's awesome just to have you here in a different space. Do you want the microphone? You have to freestyle.
No, I'm all right, thank you.
Right,
You can hear me. So I met Lee through LBB and had conversations with Lee and Cheryl about, we formed this COVID manufacturing group. We've got about 80 members, which obviously you're aware of. And the story that you told earlier about, you know, stressed out owner directors, and that rings true with me. I must have done 3 or 4 weeks working 20-hour days. And we're hearing that from the COVID group. So you've got not just issues with supporting staff through, you know, what is a very anxious time, but also owners, directors that are firefighting practical stuff, but probably at the expense of well-being. So we had a conversation, didn't we, following the LBV stuff, and you know, this is really interesting to me as to what we do to support some of these companies, because a lot of people want to support their staff, but maybe don't know how to go about doing it. So if we can pull together something that allows signposting to people that we can then communicate out across the region, that would be great.
I'm glad you said that, because one of our thoughts was if we can assist in that triage, whatever shape or form it may be. Like I said, we will hear calls for help at different times. We had a colleague in his underpants yesterday morning. That was a warning time, wasn't it? And rightly or wrongly, the wheel of life was put out, and John, the business partner, could keep thinking, have an offline session with said person. But there's tools out there, but we don't always know. We've had a few emergency calls, and sadly, Adrian's, I'm not sure if he's en route or whatever, but Adrian, who can help, Lancashire Mind, were incredibly helpful. So when we had that concern, I spoke with, I don't know if any of you know Steve over at Attack Group or not. I spoke with Steve, and we were just getting incredibly concerned, hence the call with Adrian, and that linked in with them, Tommy, and the Lancashire Mind point of view. And from a Lancashire Mind point of view, we've signposted people quite a few times where the staff are having not just slight issues, people are melting down. And that PTSD environment that we spoke about, we used to think, are we making this up? And there was an article in last Saturday's Economist on exactly that. And it also talked about a fog of sort of that's around there, of just the environment. We are in an environment of just, it's difficult for folks to get their head of, but there are solutions out there. There's people around this table who've got solutions. We need to be plugging that through. That's what I said about that Wi-Fi thing. Of there shouldn't be a delay. We should be able to link it through in some shape or form. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Linda, how are you doing? I'm going to do it this way. You might have noticed. You just make sure I don't leave anybody out there.
Around the table. And it's good our voices don't seem to be reflecting too much off the mic.
Can you hear us on the microphone?
Can people hear?
I should do the microphone. I'll do the microphone. Thank you. I'm going to pass the mic. Sorry, I'm selfishly. I've got these glasses on, so I can't hear. Put your readers on.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Super.
Thank you.
So my story, my backstory is a little bit like, is it Emma down the table? Yeah. I was a clinician and I felt I wasn't sort of making a big enough impact. And the role I'm in now is a role where I'm able to make much bigger impact on populations rather than individuals. And in my clinical days, I could see that physical and mental health were so intricately woven together. And I also believe, I was chatting to Lee earlier about the environment. I think the impact of the environmental health and our health are so woven together that well-being isn't our business in the ICS, it isn't private organisation, it's everybody's business. So the more we can join those dots up, the better. We can't do it, none of us can do it alone, none of us can solve the problems alone, we have to do it in collaboration. COVID has added massive extra challenges to all of society, and whether that's children in schools, or whether it's people's health and well-being, or whether it's people who are unemployed, or who are going to be unemployed in 12 months' time. And like you, back around a few months ago, sort of April, May, myself and some colleagues recognised that the impact of COVID wasn't just going to be the impact of the virus, but the impact of isolation and lockdown. So we set up, it's got a really punchy title, we set up a supported self-management and psychological resilience of our communities collaborative. And like this group, which is sort of a group of leaders, that's a group of people working on the shop floor as well as leaders who are able to share and swap ideas and collaborate and work together. So I think this group has a potential to feed into that and vice versa, so that we can start to know what's out there. One of the things, I think Tommy yesterday chaired our call, and somebody spoke and he said, I'm so glad that you were here presenting today because I knew nothing about the service you're offering. So I think the more we can share and sort of pollinate, the better. So that's why
it's that shop window and triage thing again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. We'll pass the mic along if that's okay.
Just do it. Good morning, everyone. As Peter's mentioned, just for some background, so my role, full-time job, is to support, not me personally, the team, all the schools in Lancashire, so every single high school, every single college, to ensure that they provide and offer for their students a world-class careers programme, so that young people, when they're leaving school, taking choices, they're informed and they're making those informed choices. However, now more than ever, we need to support teachers and students on the wellbeing agenda, because without that, really talking about career pathways is pretty pointless. So for me, this is around how we can support our schools on the wellbeing agenda. And we're seeing cases daily now, aren't we, where social bubbles. I'm a good runner school in Burnley, and last night we had an email to say that 57 students were able to self-isolate for 14 days, along with 6 teachers. And they're year 11 kids who've already lost 5 months worth of learning. They're now just 3 days into term, they're losing another 2 weeks. So for me, it's how can we bring well-being to the fore and support those schools.
Cheers, Stuart. Thank you. A little bit nervous, actually. It's the first time I've spoken in front of an audience for a long time. I spoke to anybody else, I think, in the meeting. I'm thrilled to bits to be here today. Thanks, Jay, for organising. And interestingly, it's sorry?
It was everybody.
Yeah, well, interestingly, I tried to organise one of these around about 4 or 5 years ago over in the East Lancashire region, because I felt it was so important to cascade messages that the NHS were trying to communicate to their audience. My name is David Bennett. I'm a health communications consultant. I work for Creative World Health. Some people may be aware of the work that we've been managing recently. We're responsible for the Let's Keep Talking Suicide Prevention campaign. Is there anybody in here who's not seen or heard of that campaign? It's running across the region. I'd be thrilled to bits if everyone does say they're aware of it. One of the big barriers I find in all the health communications campaigns that we run is actually reaching out to people like Stuart and Steve, who've actually got the captive audience ready for us to reach out to. You know, Stuart mentioned he deals with 156 schools. What a great channel of communications we've got there. But Steve, who works with 78 businesses, again, you know, we can really reach out to these businesses through these types of people. And this is this to me today is music to my ears to see all these people in this room. We've got Lancashire Mind in the room, who can obviously share the messages. Obviously, it'd be great if Aidan was around today, because again, a lot of the work that a lot of the campaigns that we're running, these people are actually essential to the channels that we need to reach out to. And for me, I am really, really passionate about seeing success. It's not just about delivering these campaigns, you know, consistently looking at measuring and seeing the success and what impact are we having. You know, I'm led to believe that the suicide prevention campaign that we're now managing has not seen an increase in suicides this year in the region. We're doing some really good targeted campaigns with that message in some of the actual pockets of Lancashire and South Cumbria. And I don't know if it's a good time now to do this, Jay, but obviously it's World Suicide Prevention Day today. Yeah. I'm just wondering if we could have a 40-second silence, if that's possible. Obviously we could just time that. Obviously, just, you know, is that possible? We could do that now. Okay. There's no got a timer at all, Jay. No. Thank you.
All good. 45 seconds.
Thank you very much, everybody. Just one thing I just wanted to add, and I think this is where we do fall down a little bit, is all these organisations that are in the room who are commissioning these messages, campaigns, organisations, Lancashire County Council, Lancashire Mind, Healthy Lancashire and South Cumbria, Active Lancashire. I think what we do like is somebody responsible for actually managing the communications with all these different organisations. One recent project I've just picked up is a campaign for encouraging people, health professionals, to get more involved in research. And when they've sent me all their information from their past campaigns, oh yeah, we shared all this information with communications managers, we've shared all this information with businesses, but there's been no management of that. They shared the information and expected them to go away and do, but people are so busy. You know, communications managers in health trusts, they've got information coming from everywhere, and there's nobody really managing. You know, there's nobody really looking out saying, oh, we need to be sharing this information. We need to be contacting them again, say, what have you done? What impact is it having? So for me, there's a little piece missing of the jigsaw, and it tends to be that how do we facilitate and manage to make sure that that message is reaching the people it needs to reach it, and we're able to do something about it. So,
and that's that balanced scorecard, that dashboard of what does good look like, isn't it, really, and the accountability.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, this cannot be a talking shop. We are in a state of emergency, basically. We are more than capable of, if we have the right triage and you have the right well-being Wi-Fi, for want of a better phrase, that somebody can be started to track what are certain key actions, KPIs. We have enough of them in business. I mean, as a consultancy, we do them for fun, but we need to do them in this environment too. That's what I'm here for. Absolutely. Mike.
Hi. Hello, Mike Wilson. Thanks for inviting me today. It's been great so far, and I'm hoping to take a lot from it. And if I can give a little bit back, then all good too. I think my interest in the people side of business support. And by the way, I've been a business advisor in and around Lancashire for 26 years now, working from home. So the home working bit didn't come it became quite natural to me. But the not getting out and seeing people, not actually feeling like I was doing a proper job because I wasn't seeing people, that sort of affected me, because it's all about going out and I was just saying earlier on about when you go and see a client, it's kind of showing around the factory, let's have a look at the shop floor, etc. You can't do that on Zoom. So I always felt I wasn't, even now, I'm not really doing a proper job. My real interest went back about 20 years ago when I was an Investors in People advisor and assessor, and I'm sure you're all familiar with Investors in People. And it's great from a business perspective, and they really meant it in the day that it wasn't just a badge and a certificate and a flag. You could even get a flag that you could put up in the day. It was about what people really thought, and it was about when you were doing the assessments, you would say, yeah, the management team would say, yeah, we've got appraisals, we've got inductions, we've got all these good processes and systems and documentation in place to help look after our people. But when you got, and I don't want to take anything off Steve, because he'll talk about the nitty gritty and the guts of the company when we get around to Steve. But it was really about, as part of the assessment process, you actually spoke to the people and you got them in the room and you said, go on then, what's it like for you? And actually, you wouldn't talk necessarily about, have you had an induction or have you had an appraisal? When was the last time somebody talked to you about your needs and your training and about what's important to you? And that's gone back a long time. And you based that, your investment in people assessment was based on what they told you, and you were reconciling what the manager said against what it really meant for the people. So I've always had that. I've always been really interested in what people think, and through the years, as things have evolved, etc. And I do a lot of work for Steve now, and again, I won't steal Steve's thunder. From Anthem Engagement, and that's absolutely all about what's it like to work here. Are you looked after? What's your leadership like? Are you given the opportunities to have a voice? You know, the 4 pillars of engagement, one of them being a voice. Do you get the chance to have a voice? Are you listened to? And one of the things that always strikes me, and I do a lot of work around this, is do the managers actually know what their employees do when they're not in work? And there's 2 bits to that. One is understanding where that person's coming from. And actually, what I do, and I won't go too long, but I always say to people, well, my hobby is at weekends, I stand in a field for 6 hours. What do you think I do? And somebody said, you're a scarecrow. I said, no, but it's a great answer. I'm actually a cricket umpire. Now, if you looked at what skills do you need to be a cricket umpire, I won't go into those, there's 42 laws of cricket, etc. I won't go into it. But a lot of it's management, a lot of it is actually realising when it's about to kick off. And it's, you know, there's always somebody on the wrong end of the decision, there's always somebody unhappy, but when's it going to kick off? And it's your management to make sure that doesn't happen. So I'm always interested in what people do outside work. So it's about, the manager understanding that so they can communicate and liaise with them. But it's also what skills and knowledge that you do can you bring into the workplace that helps you to be more effective. So doing what we do, and what Steve will go into a little bit more detail, you find out what people are all about, and it is that, and how can they be helpful. But it's about the individual. Everybody's different, but it's understanding everybody individually and what they can offer.
You're absolutely right there. Often somebody's pub landlord might know a lot better about how their workplace could be or how they feel there than their manager. Because their manager might not even know how to manage, let alone lead. But very often, people do want to have an answer. I was out a couple of pals, socially distanced in the Northern Quarter in Manchester Saturday, but one of the lads, simply put, he had a chance to talk with anybody about it. And he said, I'm sorry, and one of the key people who was there, who's actually your dad, said, you need to talk. Just get another drink, just need to talk. And he didn't, and it was an emotional chat. And your dad's passed on the route, he's like an old Jedi sage. But the point being is, we do need to talk. When we hear these things, we do need to do that. But in organisations, whether they're charities, whether they're groups of pals or whatever, we need to have them tells, don't we? What you do, what Steve do, often links in with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which quite a lot of you probably be familiar with, self-optimisation. Sometimes it's little things which can help people to self-optimise, can't it, be the best they can be. That can stop people. I mean, I had my appendix got gangrene through stress, and where I worked before, the environment got me stressed. 2 colleagues killed themselves, and I needed to succumb to the exhaust pipe. Not good. So these little things can make a difference in a good way or a bad way. Still got bloody scars from it. But the point being, we can make differences. These little things can make differences. They really can. So thank you for letting me just grab the mic before Tom said.
My partner is actually an infection control lead for one of the hospitals regionally, so that's why I've used the job before I took the mic, because this is a primary vector of transmission, this microphone, you understand? And I'll be doing it again afterwards. So
and I encourage everybody, that's yours, we're learning as we go, yeah?
Don't think I'm being overly,
no, you're right.
overly weird about that. I was thinking about this. I'm actually here for 6 reasons, so I thought I'd better just do 20 or 30 seconds on each of them, otherwise I'll go on too much. So I'm talking about Greg, I'm Chief Exec of Lancashire Mind, and the first reason I'm here is because I was asked, and that might sound like a trivial reason, but actually it's really important, because almost every product or service you design, if it goes wrong, it's usually gone wrong because you haven't asked the right people, or you haven't involved the people who you need to involve. So that was number one. Number two was just to remind people that we reach thousands of people as Lancashire Mind each year. An awful lot of children and young people in schools, hundreds of schools we go into every year, and we reach thousands of adults as well through programs that we do. And there's loads of stuff that's funded, and it's funded from often nationally, so it's not even, we're bringing money into the region. So if anyone wants more information about that, do have a look at our website and give us a shout about it. And then I was thinking, well, what can I learn from coming here, which is obviously a big one, and there's going to be an awful lot because there's so many people with wisdom in different sectors. But also, what can people learn from our experience? And I was thinking about, again, co-design is so fundamental to the work that we do, designing things with people. Maybe there's something that we could share around that as Lancashire Mind. Number 4 is selling stuff. Because let's be brutal, a lot of people in this room are in business and making money from wellbeing as well. And actually we have a really great, I think they're a really great range of workplace wellbeing interventions, which go right from very strategic, helping with policy and understanding workplaces, through to HR training, through to frontline staff training as well. And we're developing an employee assistance program, because what we've realised is there's a lot of really rubbish employee assistance programs out there. And having the brand of Mind is something we can really leverage to do that better. But like with everything else we do, we like to work in collaboration, so it's not just about us trying to get as much of the pie as we can. Reason 5 would be to do with networks. So obviously I'm a member of Linda's self-management forum. I also chair the community wellbeing subcell of the Lancashire Resilience Forum, which is the statutory body which responds to emergency. So we have meetings with sometimes police and army and all sorts of things like that. But the bit that we're doing is the much softer bit around what are the mental health implications of shielding and the stuff that Linda was talking about, and how can we direct resources to those. And this is one of the reasons why I usually do object to things being videoed unless I know what's going to happen with it. Because I think when you video events, you get less candour from people. But I'm going to say it anyway, which is a lot of money has been sloshing around the system because of COVID. And what can, I'll speak in the abstract, what can happen when lots of money sloshes around the public sector suddenly is people who've had a little hobby horse for years can find a way of making that fit with that money. And so people who know each other can make things happen. I'm not saying that's happening in the patch where we're working, but it's a danger. So let me just put it like that. And so there's a responsibility on all of us to hold those systems to account as well. And then reason 6, I probably wouldn't share with you if Adrian was here. Because Adrian isn't here, I think it's worth saying something about the Business Health Matters programme as well, which is St John here actually. Oh, wait. Yeah. I haven't got my lenses in, so it's maybe you'll say something about that as well when we come to it. But just to say, it's a really big, exciting partnership between Active Lancashire, UPlan, and various other partners, which is looking at health checks for people and then a range of interventions from a really wide range of partners, which we haven't even, we've not closed the door on that. We're still looking for people to provide workplace wellbeing interventions, but it's a new way of leveraging both money and resources to do workplace wellbeing stuff. And that's plenty for me.
Thank you very much indeed. So I'll pass the microphone over. So I'll wash my hands at the end. If I don't, I thought I was going to wash it to that then, sorry. So yeah, thank you for that prop reminder. Steve, I'm going to pass over to you. Right. I'm missing out all of ourselves, we said our 2 penalty before, so I'll let you wipe your hands.
Thank you for calling that out. That just shows the muscle memory that we've got. It's the first time you get around the room for the time, so appreciate that.
Right, so I'm Steve Thorpe. I the chair of the left. Why am I here? I was actually really intrigued as to what this was about, and now I've learned more today about what it's about. It's sort of triggering lots of needs I can see across Lancashire. But if I go back even before my LEP days, for those of you who don't know me, I was at a senior role at BAE, and I was an MD there and ran a business, a number of small businesses as well, and realised that there was a real issue with mental health and more about mental health awareness. And half the battle I found when we were dealing with issues, and some were with young people and some were with mature people, but there were different types of issues. What we found was the levels of awareness of colleagues, leaders, supervisors around the topic was actually quite little, it was little understanding. And what big corporate organisations tend to lean towards is process. So when anything happens with somebody, we get a process book out and we start to march through a set of steps that are prescribed for them. Well, that's great if everybody was the same, and that starts to create issues. And I remember when I was a very young manager, having a guy who worked for me who got into trouble, turned to alcohol, turned to drugs, and sadly lost his life. He was found on a street in one of the towns in Lancashire. And when I went back over, what did we do there? Did we do enough to help? Well, you're talking the 80s here. If you work in a manufacturing, hard-nosed organisation in the 80s, this is the last topic that was ever going to get discussed. So with regard to process, did we follow everything perfectly? Yes, we did. Did the guy get the help and all the offers? Yes, he did. But for me, it wasn't enough. So I realised that as soon as I get into a senior enough position where I can actually do something about it, I would do. And the opportunity came along. We created in my own business a very small programme. I campaigned for mental health across the whole of the UK company. The programme got launched across the whole of the company. It probably had the biggest uptake of hardly any programme that we've ever run. People came and volunteers to it. And the bit that sparked the need for it for me was at the end of it, we'd do a Q&A and it started it. I won't tell you about the programme, it's on YouTube if anyone wants to Google it. And at the end of it though, a guy said to me, can I have a microphone in the Q&A? He gave me the microphone. And he spontaneously told his story. And what he said was, having told this story, what he said was, if 5 years ago I could sit in a room with colleagues and talk about this stuff and feel as though someone at your level, who's pointing at me, is there to listen and understand and help me, I'd have talked about this 5 years ago when I had a major issue. And there were two things there really. One, we clearly created an environment with people he didn't necessarily know where he could stand up and do that. That was a big tip for me. And secondly, the fact that he'd described a situation 5 years ago where his colleague who was sat next to him at the time didn't know he'd been through it is amazing actually. And we talk about putting this thing in, this sort of topic and learning into leaders. Well, do you know what? Frankly, your leader is probably not the first person you're going to talk to about this. You're going to talk to your colleagues, you're going to talk to your friends, you're going to talk to your family. So what we decided to do, that if we're going to do anything on wellness, we're going to let every employee go through it. irrespective of grade, rank, whatever it is. And we did that. Now, the program, we didn't do this program to win awards. We did this program to quietly spread the word across the company, really. But it won awards. The CBI recognised it. Even the Princess Royal recognised it. You know, so it had something about it. But the real thing it had about it was it wasn't about an academic process. There was no one spouting theory and all the rest of it at people. This was a human touch program, which is the way I described it, that engaged with people and enabled people to share as well as get involved and interact. I always used to say to people that, you know, if only people could bring the human being into the workplace and not leave it at the gate when they come into work, things would get a lot better. So why am I here? I'm here because I've not been able to find yet a body of people like-minded enough that want to get around the table and do something for Lancashire collectively. I've struggled to find that. And the first time I started a conversation on it, you know, I agree there are people making money out of this, but when people come to me to talk about the topic, and the first sentence is, let me know who I am. The third sentence is, here's a list of all my programs I do. And the next sentence is, and we could do with some funding. I sort of started to lose the will to live. You know, unless you understand and bespoke and understand the issues that you're dealing with in very different circumstances and areas, you will get it wrong. So, you know, I applaud you all for doing this. I'm here to learn and help if I can.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's incredibly telling looking around here. Sorry, I just blocked the camera there. Lancashire does care, doesn't it? We're about 2/3 of the way around the table, but we do. Lancashire does care, doesn't it? Fantastic. I'm going to pass you the microphone. That's all right. Tally, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tally Bassina. I'm the Director of Transformation for the Lancashire and South Cumbria Integrated Care System. And I've said many times, we don't do transformation. We're largely in the business of rescue often, and that's a challenge. And some of them, I think this conversation is about being real about where we are, not where people think we are, but where are we really? About 18 months ago, we did some work in the integrated care system saying, I don't actually think we've got a compelling vision of where we're trying to go. And the world is not bloody set of PowerPoint slides, which, you know, again, it's easy to get caught up in, we've got a great diagram, it's not making any difference out there. And there are two things that came out of that review of, in a sense, our strategic direction. One was a commitment to needing or supporting community resilience. And the second one was that, well, another element was we spent 3.2 billion on health services across Lancashire and South Cumbria. So we're a major investor, we're a major employer of people, and we're not using that pulling power to support things. So we've got a great pathway for education, etc., etc. So there was something also about how do we use that collective investment to support inward investment? How do we get more inward investment into the county? I say this as a Yorkshireman, in supporting people in Lancashire. How do we do that? And we're not going to do it by all working in isolation. As a consequence, other people involved in that, people like Adrian, we then got to talk to Steve, and Steve, with his interest in mental health and resilience, we said, well, actually, we've got a common purpose here. So that's how we came into this. And then it's got slightly paused because of COVID, because we were hoping to do more work on this. I think there's something about the why of wellbeing, which for me is obvious. I've been in nursing for 42 years, and some of our NHS organisations are a tyranny. They're not a great place to work. We pretend they are, but they're not really. And it could be brilliant on one ward, 20 metres down the road, it could be terrible. And again, we're not always honest around that, but I think we've got a lot to offer. So I think there's the why of wellbeing. How do we convince people? We know what the evidence is. A lot of it went into the economic plan that Steve put together. It's all there, and we're supporting some work with colleagues in UCLan around what have we learned from COVID, for good or for ill. I'd like to see some sort of organising body. I think it has to be voluntary. I'd love to see some sort of charter that you sign up to and you self-report against, because I don't think we're going to make progress unless we do that. I think we've made a lot of progress in the NHS. To some extent, I think it's because if we didn't do it, we'd have even bigger problems with workforce, and we've got huge issues with workforce. We're not going to resolve workforce issues in the NHS inside of 10 years. So that's nothing to do with the people in the system. It's about funding, it's about all sorts of other political things. But I'd like to see something around that pledge and that sign up, in a sense, committing to a minimum offer. We're doing lots of good things through the digital team in the ICS. We've worked with the Lancashire and South Cumbria Foundation just to try and get that myriad of offers to support people with wellbeing and mental health signposted. But it's only one element, and the NHS is not the solution to these things. Often it responds, but it's not the solution. The other thing, I think there's something about best practice and learning, and we started that conversation with Steve. How do we showcase what we're doing? So Steve's example in BAE was like brilliant. If you can do that in BAE, why aren't we doing it in other sectors, and how do we learn from each other? I think there's something about wellbeing champions, irrespective of sector. Don't think it matters whether there's 3 in your organisation or 33. We're seeing the stress at the minute in the home care sector, nursing and residential sector, obviously with the stresses of COVID. But you've got everything from literally a corner shop to something like Marks and Spencer's, homes with multiple groups, loads of infrastructure. For other people, it's one non-binary person and a dog. It's really a challenge. We started some work on a thing called EPIC, which is our way of learning and sharing. So engage, promote, innovate, collaborate. And again, we can use vehicles like that to try and support this work and take it forward. But I think we've got to have some sort of call to arms, call to action. And in the NHS at the minute, if you don't sign up to this sort of thing, well, shame on you. And I think most people will. And then it's, well, report out. What are you doing? What's making a difference? Although we've got lots of really good examples of good work, there's still too many stories of, nobody responded, nobody listened, and then, it's not easy. Sometimes, we've all probably been in situations where we're the problem, not the solution. But then why? It's not easy. And even in COVID, I think we've seen lots of examples of people being overly stressed. We've lost more GPs in the last year. That's not sustainable. If we don't turn that round, I've had the good fortune of working, I think, in one of the best healthcare organisations in the world. It wasn't in the UK. And their commitment to well-being in the workplace was visceral, partly because they were paying a healthcare plan for the individuals. But it's absolutely real and front and centre to all that they do. And if you don't care for patients well, and you don't work with your staff well, with the best cardiac surgeon in the world, but you won't be working there in a year. And that's the kind of transformation I think we need to see in our organisations if we're going to make a difference. So I hope we can go away and, with Steve helping other people, Adrian sadly is not here. I think there's a commitment to do something to support our organisations to do something different. I hope. Thanks.
Thank you so much. You brought back a little bit of a thought to me regarding, from a commercial point of view, how we really should be getting stuck in. About 10 years ago, when I used to do process mapping reviews in organisations, you did any policy impact assessments. Not worthwhile doing knocking on doors in a certain community on a Friday, Friday, in a Jewish area on Saturday, so on and so forth. And these are the kind of checks and balances that panel did. There's probably incredible value as well as looking at it from a GDPR perspective, looking at it more holistically from a wellbeing perspective. Now, we've tried to do it inherently, but actually this is, again, it's probably, as I'm thinking, there's so many ideas coming down. One of the reasons why we're streaming and recording this is because tomorrow we're going to meet up for 2 hours with Lord Paddock, basically, and to do transcripts on what we are hearing today, because there's so many pearls of wisdom coming. We won't actually capture them, we distill them, and then we follow them up too. Because, as I said, what gets measured gets done, but we need to look at who can measure what in a particular way. So, we've got a couple of people, well, quite a few people who this has been streamed out to wellbeing providers, Richard's Lancashire, LBV, and a few others as well. So, whether we get any questions coming through from that point later, but this is exactly what we want. So, thank you so much for everything so far. I'm going to pass you over now. Always a hard act to follow afterwards.
What do you mean? Okay, hi everyone. Firstly, why am I here? Who wouldn't be here to have a bloody face-to-face with people? It's so nice to see lots of people I already know. There's a few people I don't, so I'll definitely be coming out and saying hi to you guys later. But the number of half-thrown hugs as I've nearly gone in has been almost embarrassing. I need to keep stopping myself. So why am I here? A, because I was asked. And I think it's incredibly important that we do just ask people to get involved in stuff. It's an incredibly powerful motivator. It's certainly one of the things that I try and encourage every business owner to use to do. It's just go off and ask. You ask for help, you ask for advice, you ask for support. Those that don't know me, I am the program manager for Boost, which is the growth hub for Lancashire. Hopefully a single access point for any business in Lancashire to start that conversation, to ask for help. And I'm basically just here as a big siren call to get any businesses at the moment that want to actually go and see what support might be available for them, to go off and find it. It's fully funded, it's supported and funded through the LEP, through local government, through county council, and also through government. And it's genuinely there as that single destination, if you like, for any business in Lancashire to start that conversation. There's a whole team out there that can help and support and help businesses. It is definitely there to help businesses that want to do better for themselves. And that has to be part of the siren call when we're pushing out the growth hub. However, one of the reasons for me being here today is that the whole wellbeing agenda is so fundamental. I've just made a quick note here. Fundamentally, business is about people, and I want to work with businesses that give a shit about their people, put bluntly. I'm sure we'll bleep out any swearing. I want to make a statement that I will collaborate with anybody that wants to work on the agenda of trying to help and support and make businesses even better. If you've got those solutions, I'm definitely here to listen and look at how I can help you reach those businesses. Boost is not a panacea. I have 4 or 5 services. I have an extended service with the European funded routes, but fundamentally my view is that businesses need to go out and pay for their support. And I also think that businesses are prepared to pay as long as they trust that the solutions are actually going to work. And I think that's where the business support environment sometimes falls down, because they see it as either too flippant, too processy, too tick boxy. What we need to do is look at how we create an environment where we actually engage people properly in the conversations, and then look at what those solutions look like. And then I hopefully have a conversation with business how to find the right investments to go off and make those changes within that business. So in terms of the whole wellbeing agenda, of course, businesses should be paying for it, but they need to find the right sort of solutions. So I will, again, if there's any ways I can help any of you guys have smarter, better conversations, provocations back out to businesses, I'd urge you all to go onto the Boost website, see what we've already got on there. Challenge me. I love being challenged. If I'm not doing something and I should be doing it, let's look at how we can collaborate and actually go and make it actually work. Solid. I love that epic. It's proper wow language, isn't it? But it's so...
It's a good Lancashire word, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, engage, provoke, innovate and collaborate. Absolutely gold dust that. Every single business should be doing that. Every single business, I would say, should give a shit about their employees. But at the same time, it's also about reminding that business owners and leaders, it's bloody hard for them as well. And if they're not looking at self-care, if they're not looking at helping themselves, they actually can't be the leaders that they need to be to go off and have their staff big, bright, shiny, bushy-tailed, full of ideas, full of enthusiasm that's actually taken on board. And I think I'll leave it there.
Brilliant, thank you. Hiya.
Can I ask a question?
Of course you can, fire away. Have the microphone.
Can you hear me all right?
Of course I can.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you last time.
If a business comes to you in financial crisis and you've got all these brilliant boost schemes and you can help with all of that, and then they say to you, I've got wellbeing issues with my staff, what are you doing at the moment? Because I think this is where boost can be fundamental. Because as a business, and knowing businesses, your profile's great, so we're going to come to you for support. And I think well-being could be something else you could signpost to, even if you don't want to do it yourselves.
Absolutely.
What's happening now, though?
Well,
What do you now? What do you do?
So at the moment, it would just become it would be a conversation with our business, and we have a business relationship management service, which are able to keep their eye on all the sorts of supports that are available. It would definitely be a granular conversation with that business, and actually a very great conversation. I'm not sure how many of those conversations we actually have with businesses, because that involves a heck of a lot of trust. I do trust that the team that are out there delivering pick up clues. But for me, some of that is about how we could probably work and collaborate better. So some of that would be about you guys that are actually having those conversations with businesses, recognizing that as part of that, your service is added value back into Boost. So you might meet a business which is, you're working on issues around their wellness, but at the same time, you can see that there might be other opportunities to engage through some of the funded programs that we have, and making that introduction to allow for that conversation to actually penetrate and get a lot deeper. We are aware, and because I do know lots of people in the room, I'm sure my colleagues do as well, we would make referrals into the right sorts of support that are available. But I don't sit here and say it's perfect, and that's why I need to collaborate with absolutely everybody. I think it's everyone's agenda to make sure that we're actually working smartly together, and it's not enough just to simply lob in the odd little bomb everywhere and expect me to do everything perfectly, expect you to do everything perfectly. It is absolutely a team effort. It's a Team Lancashire effort to make sure that we actually go out there and try and do the very best we can. As I always say, as long as we do things with integrity, we can't go far wrong. But yeah, I think it's a very legitimate challenge when someone comes in. I'd say hand on my heart that if anyone came into us with that sort of challenge, we'd absolutely knock it out of the park, and we would find the right sort of support for people. But what we need to do is start putting those conversations much more explicitly out there into Lancashire through great storytelling, through showing people what solutions look like, to helping people understand that it's okay to ask for help. The whole Ask for Help campaign was born out of a kind of humane response to a worldwide pandemic. And we very quickly realised that businesses were struggling. And so we quickly stripped back all the usual crap that we have in terms of the growth hub. It wasn't about growth criteria, it was genuinely about us having a conversation with the business about what their challenges are. And sometimes that challenge would be just about, I don't know how to cope. I've got 20 staff, and I think I might have to make them all redundant because all my businesses run to pot. And it's about creating those pauses to allow businesses sometimes just to talk, because there is still, I think, quite a macho culture within business, which is, I'm the business owner and business leader, and I'm just, I am completely infallible. Like I say, I want to work with those businesses that recognise that we're all flawed in some way, and actually the most powerful thing you can do is go away and ask for some help. But you've got to ask for help knowing that actually you're going to have to you're going to have to do some stuff for that. It's not, Boost will not suddenly make your business work. But we will have tools, we will have solutions, we will have people that can help people move it in the right direction. But fundamentally, the business owners, the business leaders are the ones that need to implement that change. I think Steve wants to come in.
Yeah, can I just add some more? Quite interesting actually. It's quite interesting actually, because that's a great question. And I often think that Boost does a fantastic job, by the way. It's amazing. The reputation is extraordinary across Lancashire. We have to be minded though that it isn't the solution for everything. And once it starts to be a solution for everything, then its impact will shrink. And I think it is about finding a way that when people reach out and ask for that support, that they can be pointed in the right direction for the right professional support and help. And there are organisations in this room today that can help the business and leaders and employees work through those issues. I found when we put mental health first aiders in our business, it was amazing how 5 or 6 of them suddenly turned into, you know, having their own consultancy couch, and you know, and that wasn't what they're there for. They're there for to point people at the right thing. So we need to be very careful, especially in this space, that we encourage people to step into a good space and a safe space where they get the right support, in my view. That's had the most impact. And I tell you, it doesn't cost a lot of money to do sometimes the right thing. We launched something, I think it was called Stop and Talk, I think I called it. And we just stopped the whole business for an hour. And no consultants coming in, no big interventions. So we stopped the whole business for an hour. And each area, each local working group just sat and talked about the climate they work in. That's all they did for an hour. My God, the change it made across the whole population of the organisation. Because they actually sat for an hour, and the first one apparently was a bit, well, what does he mean by that? And I'd said to them, we're not going to measure, we're not going to list it, we're not going to come back to you and say we're doing 4 actions. It's just for you, you're not just walking around the docks on Preston Dock. That's what you do, right? Some of them ran the meetings actually, like the little groups, walking around Preston Dock. They did it on a walk. So I think sometimes they're very easy things to do, and sometimes they're quite complex interventions. And I think Boost has got a great role to play in saying, I can't answer that question for you, but you know what? I'll find you someone who can do it. You do a great job on it.
Thank you. Absolutely sage words. Humans, we're perfectly imperfect, aren't we? I think from a Wellbeing Lancashire point of view, if we can help Boost, help the people in them organisations, and I guess we start to get ourselves towards a position where we can shape up that triage and knowing what's out there, what the help is, then we can start to do that Wi-Fi for wellbeing, if you will. Last but not least, gentlemen, I bet you thought we were, didn't we? Yeah. And you're usually on stage as well, you must be frustrating this. How's your well-being with me having microphones? Of course you can. Of course you can. You do whatever you want. Go on. Come on.
Hello, good morning. Sorry. I will walk around like this is what I do. So I couldn't see half the people at this side of the room as well, so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to stand up. And I've had 3 cups of coffee and a Barocca. Imagine me on that. Oh my word. Chasing the moon. Absolutely. Chasing the moon. One thing I really like you saying actually, Jay, was this is not a talking shop. He said, this is action. So I said, well, that's one of the reasons why I stood up, because we need to sort of, you know, do something about this. I quite like that. So I'm right behind you in terms of, you know, what we need to do to move that forward. So I'm Steve Smith for those people that don't know me, and I've got 3 hats, really. So my first hat, my main sort of day job, is MD of a business called Anthem, and we're an engagement consultancy. So we work with hundreds of organisations to find out the truth and what's going on within their business, and then we can do something about it. So people like Mike, ones that you heard from before, help us to be able to do that. And currently we're working with 78 organisations and counting on something called Navigate the Nonsense. I wanted to call it Cut the Crap, but Mike, in his professional wisdom, said, actually, that's not really professional, Steve. You know, so what we're trying to do is a series of surveys and some help with these 78 organisations to find out the truth about what's going on. So we're looking at things around engagement in the business, but we're also looking at well-being and mental health. And it's told us an awful lot. So from these 78 organisations, we've got just over 8,000 responses so far. And if we get a chance later, I've got some stats that have never been sort of publicised before, so I can share some of that with you. And if we don't get time, I'll do that afterwards. Because there's some really fascinating stuff. People are struggling. This is a real challenge. You know, this isn't just something that we think, actually, let's look at mental health and well-being. It's real, and it's really happening today. So we need to do something with that. Secondly, I'm Chief Vision Officer. I used to be Chief Exec, but I changed the title, of an organisation called NWEG, North West Employee Engagement Group. And we've got lots of members in the room, which is fantastic. But involved in this group, we've now got just over 2,300 organisations who employ over 1 million people in the North West. And if we can just turn that dial up 0.1%, what difference is that going to make to businesses and people? So one of the things that I'd love to do, and my commitment to this group, is to provide every organisation who's involved with Wellbeing Lancashire with a membership. We want people to learn, we want people to get involved and get stuck in, because we're all in this together. Hashtag we're all in this together. And that's true. So I'd like organisations to get involved. The vision of that group, so as I said, I'm Chief Vision Officer, but the vision is to make the North West the best place to work in the world. You know, and I say it, and I get emotional when I say it, because I think it's the best place to live, but we're nowhere near the best place to work. As a region, the North West is less engaged than that there London. I'm not having that. There's no way I'm having that we are less engaged as a workforce than London, so we need to do something about that. Third, on my third hat, it's quite a cool one, and I don't talk about it quite a lot, but I'm a government advisor. Ooh. So back in 2012, David Cameron, whether you like or love the guy, had the intelligence and the foresight to appoint me as what's called an engagement guru. And I don't like gurus, I'm a ninja. So if anybody's friends with me or connected with me on LinkedIn and stuff like that, you'll see this phrase engagement ninja, just because it's quite cool. And that was it. The reason why I wanted to come, other than being invited, you know, again, like Andrew said, it's nice to be invited to get involved in stuff, isn't it? It makes you feel important. But the challenge is real, you know, and I think lots of organisations that we work with are saying, well, you know, we've done this and we've got sanitisers and we've got things on the floor and people know what they're supposed to do. But I think the psychological challenge is bigger, and it's probably more important. You know, so again, we're working with organisations to help them to understand that these people who work for us and turn up for work are real human beings with needs and fears. Lots of people are frightened at the moment. That's one of the things that come out of the Navigate the Nonsense survey. People are frightened. They're not just frightened about the virus, they're frightened about the business, the livelihoods, they're not sleeping, all this sort of stuff. So the data is there, the evidence and the proof is there, and we need to do something about it. So, like I said, I'm right behind you with this, and I'm dying to get cracking.
Thank you so much. I can't wait when we can find out enough. And it's funny you mentioned David Cameron, because back in the day, there was something which a lot of folk may or may not have appealed to, big society, did it big now we. But that enabled quite a lot of social enterprises to come forward, and we were lucky at the time, go back to 2010, it would have been 2011, something like that, where social enterprises started to become a thing, and actually private and public sector partnerships started to work in a slightly different way. And whatever happened to sort of the theory of big society, the action of that, I guess this is kind of like what we're doing, I guess, in a way, or certainly what informs that piece. And I know we talked at the time of nudge behavioural economics and all the good sort of good stuff, but the reality is, if we can get folk together because of a passion, which is not fueled by profit, but by purpose, the why we are here for what we want to do is exactly that. And if there's a passion behind something, we're not going to wait for permission to do this. This has to happen. We've got a PTSD emergency in the region, in the world. But it's not going to happen by us just talking about it, is it? I know we are talking, but I hope this is activists talking rather than just waffling. We can make a difference, can't we? I'm going to pass you over, please, to St. John.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Actually, watching this come round reminds me of when I was at school being taught by psychotic Morris brothers, and standing at the front of a physics lesson, he said, "If everybody gets this physics equation wrong, I'm going to cane you." And he started at the front, and I was sitting right at the back, and I had to watch this guy cane everybody towards me.
Okay.
Hopefully I won't take too long, although one of the other side effects of having to be at the end is I now am in possession of a bladder which is sitting just underneath my chin. Why am I here? Long story, which I will cut down, but I hope give you some insight into where I am personally and therefore my role within one of the universities in the region. Let's go back 20 years. I was an arrogant young man spat out of the relatively elite surgical training system when I was a consultant surgeon, professor, consultant surgeon. And I was working in, at that time I trained in London, but I spent a year in South Wales. And one of the areas I used to cover was Merthyr Tydfil. I don't know if Merthyr Tydfil means anything to anybody, but as a representative of an interesting community, I think it serves well for this small story. And I specialised in head and neck surgery, particularly head and neck cancer, and the thrill of reconstruction, the thrill for me, that is. And I would sit in the the review clinics with these individuals for whom I had performed what I felt was obviously top-ranked surgery. And the reason for this review clinic was twofold on reflection. One was to remind this individual how lucky they were that they had me treating them. And the second reason was to advise this individual from Merthyr Tydfil and the surrounding valleys that they needed to think positively, they needed to give up smoking, they needed to look at their nutrition, they needed to stop drinking alcohol and taking risks in their sexual behaviour. And I ticked the box. And I ticked that box in and I put it back into an evaluation, and I presented at some ridiculous conference in the last year, the next year. Reflection is a great tool, isn't it? What I realised is that individual then walking back into the community of Merthyr Tydfil stood absolutely no chance of attending to any of the requests that I put on them. And head and neck cancer in South Wales, you can imagine, is enormous. And it's a terminal disease, pretty much, by the time it presents in places like Merthyr. Let's switch forward 20 years to where I am now. I find myself in a relatively senior position, let's be fair, of a university with 35,000 students. It's a big footprint. We have the biggest health footprint, whatever the word health means, we can discuss that. And I find myself in a position where I'm having to draw up strategies. And Steve will know, and Talib and Andrew and others will know, that universities still suffer from the silo mentality. I will sit and listen to groups who are pitching to me because I control the budgets for research and enterprise and innovation, and will pitch to me in under various headings. The big reason I'm here today is the university is, as some of you will know, has a new vice chancellor, and a new strategy is being written for the university, and it's a big university. As many of the universities in the region are, I'm speaking for one only. And I want to be absolutely clear to the individuals in the university that no longer will we tolerate blue sky thinking that doesn't reach beyond the four walls of the academics' offices. What I'm hoping to get from discussions like this is an umbrella view of the various actors in this field. So I go back into the university and say, I'm not going to support you unless your activity in this field of well-being has a significant target and output at the end, impact. And I think it's the only way that we as a university can start to make more use of ourselves as a whole, as opposed to portions. So I'm passionate at breaking down that silo mentality. And I love the word epic, and I will nick that and take that back home. Second reason I'm here, or one of the many reasons, and I know Tommy got through the 6 of them, I won't do that, because my bladder won't let me. But the second reason I'm here is I'll be honest with you, I'm sorry if I'm going to upset anybody in the room because of their business connections. I'm getting absolutely fed up of people telling me that the Northwest's concerns around a number of areas, let's take well-being, that the Northwest concerns are being served by Greater Manchester. I've had enough of it. I was in a meeting yesterday of an elite group, NHSA, who are bidding for large monies coming out of Bays. I think Tom Bell is trying to get this levelling up money around research and innovation. 400 million will be coming out allegedly from the comprehensive spending review. But the NHSA have delegated centres that will lead the allocation of this money. And guess what? Manchester, Newcastle, Leeds, Sheffield. We're just not even in the... So of course I had a little bit of a hissy fit, very academically, very mature. We have got to stop being serviced by other areas. And in fact, to the extent I'm anxious about the collaboration we have outside of this region into Manchester, because we don't directly benefit as much as we should do. So that again has got to reflect in the strategy going forward, that this is Lancashire, 3.2 billion in a health service. We've got to sort that out. Third thing, and Steve might think I'm crawling up his rear end here, but I took this job on as research and enterprise about not long before Steve took on the chair of the lab. And for the first time, I really began to understand the economic knock-on benefit of having a health and well-being strategy that improves productivity within businesses. I'll be honest, I come from a surgical background, and you have all sorts of ideas about mental health and so forth can have in certain arenas. This was the first time really listening to Steve talk. I think it was at a Chamber of Commerce out in Blackburn, I think. And it was really inspirational, Steve, about how you articulated that for me. And of course, that now means I can feed back into a university. And again, telling individuals whether they're going through curriculum. I was interested in Stuart's talk about the schools, because it's all about pipelines and going upstream, not dealing with the problems downstream. We've got to face that. So we can engage in curriculums to make sure that the strategies that we're devising for teaching and research and enterprise have a product to aim at. And I guess the final reason that I'll just mention here, because he's not here, is I have had the pleasure of Adrian coming into the university. Adrian's tactics with universities can best be described as academic terrorism. But there's no doubt he makes it absolutely clear what the benefits of getting academics alongside businesses for the well-being of a region. And my promise to this group is that the strategy that we will develop for many of the reasons that I've outlined will reflect the health and well-being needs of this region, and that the products that we will produce over the next 4 and 5 and 6 years will, I hope, serve the businesses in terms of employment and strategy and influence and direction going forward.
Thank you so much. I'm going to protect your bladder by not posing the next part to it. We had 3 questions, if you will. We've been blending them, and we knew we were going to blend them by coming around and having a conversation with what we've got. Just one point to mention, Damien's filming, so he's taking photographs, but he's not filming, so if you think you need captured from all angles, you're not. Just have some shots taken there. So that was just for clarity. I'd secretly passing me little slips of things to make sure I mention, because I do forget a heck of a lot. Thank you all for explaining the reasons why you are here. We've been touching on in quite a lot of the content which people have been saying there regarding, well, how do we manage this challenge? But how do we manage this challenge? There's whiffs of public-private partnership, there's organic ways, there's measuring the data through dashboards. But who's got some burning thoughts regarding how do we manage this? There is an absolute health tsunami, and this needs to have a Lancashire accent, let's be very clear. Not in every street, but it needs to be focused geographically with the needs, particular characteristics in Lancashire. We are driven by purpose and passion and all the rest of it. That's all well and good being driven by it, but where are we going? How do we manage that? Looking to see if anybody raises any hands there. So what sort of solutions, what sort of ways can you think forward from people around this table, or people missing from this table as well, because there will be X the unknown, which we will be missing from there. So, Emma.
Can I just say, like, a good place to start is the kind of, there's so much information out there for people, trying to access the information for businesses, individuals, communities. So it's being clear on who's promoting what. There's a lot of repetition, there's a lot of gaps, and I think going back to what David said about communication, I think it's something that where the focus needs to be on for people to be clear on the message that we're trying to, where's the best place to get information, what's the right information. The internet's full of nonsense out there. So when the businesses are accessing it, when when individuals are accessing health information, where is the best relevant current place to get it? So it starts with communication.
Thank you. That does raise a good point. If you think of the Venn diagram overlap, if lots of different circles overlap and Lancashire Wellbeing is at the middle of that, how do we reference that? If there's research being done, industrial strategy, manufacturing strategy, whatever's being done, how do we make sure that that's on the radar for Wellbeing Lancashire? Not for a vanity point of view, but because actually there's core elements into it. Industrial strategy needs to reference what we've seen umpteen times in The Economist. If you look at the development of trades and skills, purpose, well-being, Maslow's hierarchy of needs gets touched. Steve, I'm going to pass you over. I'm going to lift you forward again, please, for the audience.
I'll do it again after this. I'd like to see some collaborative body formed, frankly, that we come together, we define and simplify a purpose, so we get clear on what we want to try and achieve with that collaborative body. I think that would be an amazing step because it's missing in Lancashire. There are lots of different things, but this collaborative body, which is made up of very different people, it is, I think, what we need really for Lancashire, and I miss that because I can't see it anywhere else. I think the second bit for me is how do we then define what's important? So, what as a body, what do we want to deliver? What do we want to achieve? And even just setting, 2, 3 nice objectives would be wonderful, really. I think if we're not careful, we will all walk out that door and think this was a really entertaining session, and it has been. But what I've come here for really is to see whether this group could form a collaborative body that could have some longevity to it, that could have some purpose to it, and that can be, as St. said, we sit in the shadows sometimes of Liverpool, Manchester, Sheffield, Leeds, because they've got their own combined authorities and that's in the government route right now. But we don't have to do that. We don't have to be victims of all that going on around us. We can create organisations like this, we can create purpose, and we can create vision from it. And I think that's what I would like to see from this, and that should be, if everybody was up for that type of thing, that's the sort of thing I would
I couldn't get to the microphone quick enough then to say thank you. We think it's a start of a 10 with what we've got, so that we've been an MVP. Totally going to be buffed and polished, but at least we're sat around the table, aren't we? Yeah. There's some incredible minds, influencers on here. Of course, there's XP Unknown, other people who are there, but if we can start that forum. Any other thoughts? Linda. Good one, I've got long legs, didn't you?
First of all, in response to Emma's comment about communication, one of the reasons that we set up the collaborative across the integrated care system, which is mostly attended actually by third sector partners, it's less, there's quite a few people from health, but also local government, but mainly it's third sector, and then we have other sectors, DWP, we have some people from the left in the Digital Skills Partnership as well. But one of the main reasons that we set it up, apart from the whole big wellbeing agenda and the fact that isolation and lockdown was going to cause significant impact, was the fact that we were aware that we were confusing the public by so many offers of help. So as lockdown started, there was Facebook groups being set up by local communities, which is fantastic. It's great to have initiatives. But we noticed that Lancaster County Council and the ICS both had sets of information and resources about wellbeing that were either conflicting
or could have been more complementary, or there was overlap, but actually one was a better offer than the other, and they weren't aware of it. So it was actually about the communication of resources that we sort of mainly started the collaborative. And we've been working for over 2 years, and it's finally just at the point of almost coming to fruition with a tech company to produce a single digital front door, which will be a place for curation of resources. So we've got our health and third sector and local government partners, we've got libraries, we've got adult learning, we've got the digital skills are pulling together digital resources for people. So I'd be more than happy to sort of share the vision for that with everybody in the group. And then go back to your original question about, what's the solution, what do we do? I think when you think back to what Talib was saying about the NHS, we have often been reactive rather than proactive, and rather than going upstream. It was great to hear Sinjan say the word upstream, because that's probably one of the most used words in my vocabulary. And in fact, I'm surprised I didn't mention it in my intro earlier. And when you look at the upstream factors that cause health problems, that cause poor educational achievement, that cause employment or unemployment, those upstream factors are the same. So I think whatever we as a collective want to do, we have to get as far upstream as possible. And if we want to promote people's well-being, we have to start with things like poverty and food poverty. We have to think about the person as a whole person, the environment they live in. And in terms of sort of measures of success, I think, the number of homeless people or the amount of people using food banks, those are the examples in our team that we often say will be a measure of success of the work that we do. That's it. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Love it. You're absolutely right, upstream. And also, I think what you were saying, or it felt what you were saying there, was one version of the truth for Lancashire. One clear set of measures, one clear set of or repository of information, articles, journals, whatever they may be, but it's representing the diversity within Lancashire, and there's incredible diversity. Where I live, life expectancy is probably 10 years more than it is in a more challenged area. Where I grew up, there's a 10-year difference. That's not right. So going back to measures, there's certain measures where, for example, variation, those kind of things, where we really need to be, see what can that be linked into. Well, actually, that's linked into the stuff that Adrian's doing with the workplace health, healthy aging and that kind of stuff. And there'll be lots of other stuff, but if we can gradually get to one version of the truth for Lancashire as a solid voice with a triage, it's a start of 10, isn't it? Surely it's a start of 10. What does other people think? What do other people think? I'll just skip the laziness telling. I'm going to go to Tommy first and on to you, if that's okay.
Thanks, Jay. And you've a couple of other people have hit upon things that I was going to raise, actually, because the word that keeps sticking out for me is trust. I was talking to Mike before about how do you get trust with clients when you're on Zoom. When Steve was talking before about the guy who had something happen 5 years earlier, and suddenly a space had been created in which he felt he could share that information. We actually have a crisis of trust going on at the moment, because algorithms are driving people to more extreme versions of whatever it is they think. And you saw with Brexit, people on both sides of it didn't just disagree, they actually could no longer regard the people on the other side, sometimes the same. But you have to be stupid or you have to be wrong in some way to understand that. And that crisis of trust is absolutely fundamental. We won't get to one version of the truth because actually there's lots of drivers driving people into other places. So to be effective in any intervention we do, we have to understand who people trust, whether that's leaders in their communities, whether it's their employer, whether it's their doctor, whether it's a religious leader, whether it's whoever. We have to identify those intermediaries within communities who can share that version of the truth which is based in science around stuff to do with the virus, but then to do with well-being as well. To create that trust is really fundamental. I don't know how we measure it, but I think it's a challenge for us.
Thank you. Absolutely bang on the money. And I'd say one of the interesting things with trust and building up trust often can come in different ways. But as human beings, as people in Lancashire, we've got more in common. And I've taken that from the Joe Cox Foundation because there's some stuff that we had hands in there regarding, we have actually got more in common. And I think going back to trust, more in common, Dave's not there at the moment, but the session we had yesterday with the business leader and the underpants on there, and then it turns out things aren't perhaps as rosy as they were. There was a trust in that room. It doesn't happen overnight, and it happens in different ways with different people. But if we start to look at how we can build trust, and perhaps something like this can build trust as a Lancashire characteristic, if you will, then at least we're starting to get into the right way. And equally, recognising all the different pockets, all the different areas, all the different tribes and everything else within Lancashire, is then we have got more in common. And actually, the overlap between this tribe and that tribe can build up some mutual trust. It always takes it back to those ancient principles of mutual aid that humans are wired for. We can start to move towards that way. We can do it with a Lancashire characteristic, I think, as well. Tally, I know you're the auctionman, but I'm still going to pass you back.
I've got passport to be in Lancashire. My PA said to me this morning, she said, well, I was reading the brochure and what really important people are going to be at that meeting. And you're going as well. I said, oh, thanks. But the point, I think, is that I suppose to use the parlance of our times, there's loads of influences in this room. And I can't imagine there are a lot of people who are not on the same line on. If Steve's involved and David's involved and Jay or St John, why wouldn't I want to get involved? So I think we shouldn't overlook that. I think that's really important. That's why I agree with Steve. Creating some sort of group, we can all chuck in some resource, commit our time. I think that's easy. The thing I think we have to avoid is I don't think we need to justify the why of why we want to do this. I think it's pretty straightforward. We've got all the evidence. Half the people aren't going to read that. If they want it, we can give it to them. And Steve's work, I think it's all there in chapter and verse with colleagues from Innovation Agency and others. But I think having that simple mission and then just getting on and doing, again, I think that's the way to go. So I'm for getting some actions out of this, and whether that's, I trust people in this room. That's one of the reasons I came. It doesn't mean I have to be in the room or Linda has to be there, but we can contribute. So I think getting a working group together and getting some action, I think, is the way to go, building on what everyone said. Thank you so much.
Thank you, absolutely. Bang on the money, really, though. We tried ourselves with a 90-day plan. Like I said, we're about 60 days into it, something like that, 70 days into it. Also, Michael, talking of time, we've got throwing roast, just checked then. We were due to be wrapping up. Is everyone all right to go for probably about 10 minutes? If that's okay. And then I'm going to pass you the microphone. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll I just want to agree with what you just said about making things happen. I mean, we're into September now. Furlough scheme's ending in October. We don't have a couple of years to play about with this. Some of this stuff is massively time sensitive. So I totally agree, let's get a collective of people together, the right brains in the room and the right expertise to give the right solutions. But it's about quickly deciding what the needs are, the biggest needs are, and then getting some targeted solutions for people. But conscious that, we're not, 6 weeks after the end of the furlough scheme, in terms of redundancies and employees under stress and all of that stuff. Some of this stuff needs to be happening immediately.
What do you think is the priority?
The priority is getting the experts in these areas, which is not me, to give really clear information out. From my perspective, it's obviously employers, so getting that information together in a really easy to digest, easy to work with way, and then some people like the likes of Boost to be able to go, and a manufacturing employer comes to you and says, right, I need help. And actually, do you know what? Automatically, you're going to do the business stuff with them, but here's all the wellbeing stuff. Because if they are having issues that are related to the business, they're also having wellbeing issues. It's a given. So you don't even need that. Are we in a trust position to have this conversation? You just give it them automatically. But it's getting that together in such a way that is easily digestible and is the right information, so the employers don't have to look at it and assess is this good, is this bad, is this. So that will take some time, but some of the stuff, we need to be doing immediately.
Agreed. You're okay to pass the microphone on to Pete. Just going to add an interject and turn around to this young man here. What we found in the war bunker point when we had asked for help, when we set up the war bunker just before then in Sandbury, we found top 10s, hold on hands, was a very useful, fast way to get something out there. There's a top 10 checklist for effectively various different elements of business survival, life survival in some cases. Perhaps that just for something to get out as a point of, and it can be backed up with other stuff, and then you can iteratively change. But as a statement of intent, we need the Wellbeing Lancashire top 10 checklist or whatever it may be, and we can work behind this as a bit of a working group to what that top 10 is. And of course, we'll have some bun fights. It should be this, it should be that, but we can get something out. That's something we could do in a week.
And
we did it then.
Well, so
You never speak email.
to actually find that out through all our various social media engagements is hugely impactful.
I mean, that's them top 10 were bonkers. Freshfield, I remember the late night emails, but the point it did it went out there. And the tricks you miss, you're just doing the next iteration. Something's out there. Perhaps that can be taken out from here.
The top 10 with some corresponding blog content or stories that show and bring it to life.
You know the machinery that can make it happen.
Well, one thing we have got kind of outside of this meeting is the launch of the website, where we've got an opportunity to take any information that anyone around the table can share with us and put it all in one place, so that an action from today, within a week, we can have that content going up onto the website. So straight away, you've got something that goes out to people that one, you can signpost, but we can bring it in. So the fact that we've got so many great influencers with so much great information already, and we've got channels to push it out, ultimately that's one of our key kind of goals anyway. So if we can do that, we can make that happen.
And if we can share that with this, I know we've not got the mighty Freshfield, but if we can share that with you vicariously, we've got that. Brilliant stuff. Michael, you still got the microphone. I spoke to Rob. Please go for it.
I was just picking up on the next point about the timings of stuff and the furlough scheme coming to an end and the kickstart scheme starting. And the timing's a real problem because things are starting really quickly. And whilst the government have built in sort of a focus on employability support, there could have been a focus on wellbeing support as well in those placements for those 16 to 24-year-olds that are all going to get 6 months of a kind of extended work placement. Why aren't we putting in a bit of focus about that? Well, we're talking about it in real time right now, and it's really hard to kind of retrofit if it goes very far. So it will be good to jump in now, but it is about action now, really.
Yeah, I started to turn into it. Something out there. Thank you. Mike, did you? Yeah, you did. I was twitching me out.
Yeah, you're on. Yeah.
Steve, there's the last few minutes. I know you've got a 1 o'clock out finish.
Yeah, I think it's practical time now, isn't it? And what I would suggest is, I mean, Steve's offered some support in terms of the data he's already collected.
Indeed.
And that data will be fantastic, and that will actually tell you what employees and people want and what their issues are right now. So maybe it's a case of just analysing that data and then any other data that people have got, practical, I suppose, practical terminology that people are really struggling with. Break that all down and work out, right, so if there's so many people who are struggling because of mental health or trying to go back into work, etc., the data will be there. And then it's just a case of putting an action plan together, right, how do we solve that particular issue around mental health, etc., right, and the solutions, let's find out what the issues are, and then the solutions, the data's already there, let's just work on it.
You ran on the money there, and I think if there's anything better to inform the top 10, will be the data. If you'd be able to start, have you got the data in front of you?
I have.
I'll pass the tally, and then if I can pass over to you, that will focus the mind. That's okay.
I guess just the thing I was thinking is, we've got this logo and we've got this strapline, Wellbeing Lancashire. So are we actively saying we're going to create a social movement? Is it a voluntary thing? What is it? I mean, I think there's something about, apart from the red rose, taking something and just going with it. So are we going to create a social movement and try and get others to come along? Is it going to be a voluntary? What is it? I think we've got to get on with that, and that's the key thing for me. But the social movement thing feels great. Like we're committing individually, and I think it will draw people in.
Our aim is to be a membership body that has influence.
Yeah.
So we're not just a talking shop. It's simply, yes, they are providers and they can become members of Wellbeing Lancashire, different levels of membership. Yeah, we've got to get some way of paying for some admin support because we're bringing basically, we've got our day jobs as well. So that is, but the key thing then is the think tank element of it, if you will, there's this side of it, and that's the influence or the ability. It's not, we're not the influencers, but if we're not smart to the people in the room who can influence that vision, then that has to happen. So yeah, that's the movement part of it. It's going to be activist driven to that end, but of course, there's the ability to make sure there's a little bit of a commercial engine behind there, so that providers get a good chance to there. But equally, not just everybody can sign up to that logo. If you're using wellbeing services as a force for the bad, then, you know, just to crudely make some coin, then you're going to be found out. So we've got to make sure there's a credibility piece. As we shape that accreditation piece, which Emma's taking forward, we want to try and get a grip of there. So have I missed a trick?
Just a really quick clarification question based on what Steve said, but what are we? Is the scope workplace well-being only, or are we talking about community well-being?
Community, individual, workplace. So we've deviated towards them because of the time from there, and because of people predominantly working places or are certified as consumers. They don't work for places, but they are linked into that ecosystem.
Okay, that's fine.
We'll start the revolution.
So we know what our remit and scope is. And of course, our workplace, one of the things we say is that once you influence people, let's say in the NHS workforce, they influence their communities and families.
In that way, the genie is out of the bottle. Now, what I'm very, very keen to do is, before we go, can we get a team photo about, if you are happy what you've heard today and you're not heard anything that makes you squint or scream, would you be prepared to stand behind that banner in a socially distant way, and CEO is pretty switched on with that, as a statement of support? Today is a call of action. Stuart.
Well, I have an ask. I'd like to work with somebody on potentially looking at delivering a CPD workshop to support careers leaders in Lancashire.
Love it.
That's an ask.
Well, that's the sort of thing that we want to be able to assist with. Totally. And that's when we said about having a think tank and, I guess, a consultancy arm, if you will, to a form. We can assist in there. So, yeah, that's definitely the sort of thing. So thank you for that. Thank you. The good thing is normally I have to scribble all the to-dos down, but we're recording this, so tomorrow then we'll scribble all the stuff down. And from the digital point of view, no, I've only asked for the mic there, because from the digital point of view, we're going to need some support. Lee can't do it all on his own.
Absolutely. I think also, as well as now is the best time ever to communicate with people about their own health and well-being, because guess what? What COVID has done, it's brought health to everybody's attention. People's behaviours are changing, and we tried for years to change people's behaviour. We've got winter pressures around the corner. I would be amazed if people don't start taking more responsibility for their own health and well-being during the winter pressures. So we are at a really, really good point to communicate with people and audiences, because they are more understanding of their own needs to look after themselves. So yeah, I think this is collaborative. Yes, we need it. We probably need project teams to, again, make sure it's not just about getting those messages out there through social media. It's not just about getting those messages out there through websites, through information. We've got to manage and measure the impact. You know, again, we work with organisations that spend tens of thousands of pounds on campaigns, and I always say you need to have evaluation, develop the next steps, because other than that, we won't know how to make it successful. And hopefully this is, you know, there'll be a continuity here. You know, we've got the ICS in Lancashire and South Cumbria. That's been a fantastic asset for the whole of the region. There's also going to be barriers in all of this. I live in East Lancashire. I know there have been barriers with East Lancashire CCG and Platinum Down CCG because of, I'm not saying it's because of power trips, but it's because of different opinions and different organisations having different objectives. We need to get those on board, and we need to get their commitments to managing this and letting us get on with it and supporting them. So, thanks, Jay.
Thank you, absolutely. But we've got more in common, haven't we? This is bigger than the tribalism that we're seeing. This is bigger than any political bits. Before Steve goes, we're just going to get his cut. Can we get the money shot of the photograph? And then if we're able then to get the other Steve to talk us through that data, if that's okay. Is everyone all right with that? So, Celia, do you prefer us at the back, do you prefer us at the front?
At the back.
That way then. So if we can stand in a socially distant way, that would be absolutely gorgeous.
Well, I'll never can just face this one way to not really know each other.
Do you need big one at front?
These people like behind it, so it's almost like you're backing it.
Yes. All right, yeah.
Kind of thing. And then everyone's looking down. And then who's going to go? And you get
No, I don't mind. Get my shoulders. Yeah, get my
Can you get us on the lounging, please?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Safe travels. Yeah, to be continued very, very soon. Yeah. Thanks very much. If we're okay for 5 minutes for Steve later.
Right. Just Jason could have read them out.
Right, okay, so for those who remain, I want to pass the microphone over to Steve. If you've got some data, please. Just one point, we said this was not going to be a talking shop, so we will be watching for 2 hours tomorrow with strong brownies if there's any left and strong coffee. We'll be doing the transcripts of this to get the action plan here for this. This is not a talking shop. One of the key actions we will aim for within a week is to have a start of a top 10 checklist. Okay, like a deadline to focus the mind. Steve, you want the microphone? Do you want to stand up again? Or do you need to sit down?
No, I'll sit down. Consider it then.
Okay, fine.
Brilliant. So a couple of what it will take 10 minutes. I mean, I've got a detailed report that I can share with everyone afterwards. It's about 20 odd pages, so there's lots and lots of information in there. But some of the key things, smash myself in the face with the mask. One of the key things that really sort of jumped out at me was one of the questions that we asked. So again, this data is current. This is September in Lancashire. You know, it's current. This isn't, you know, in 2019, someone said X, Y, Z. This is September 2020 in Lancashire, people at work. And one of the questions was around thinking about your own mental health. How are you currently coping at the moment? You know, it's not an engagement survey. This is a real sort of people, human being survey. 36% have said poorly. 5% have said very poorly. So some of those people who answered very poorly that I'm really struggling with this, weren't sleeping. You know, they're highly stressed. You know, this is real stuff that's going on. So 36%, so more than a third, have said I am not coping, which is a scary thing. 39% have said I'm all right. Is it real like it? I'm all right. Are you? Are you really all right? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. You know, I'm getting on with this. But only 25% of people working today have said, yeah, I'm fine. I'm doing all right. I'm positive. You know, I'm going to get through this. And it's only a quarter of the people working. So this is looking at just over 8,000 people. You know, it's not enough. These people that are telling us this. And one of the other questions was around what good things have you found or learned during this time? So again, it was really focusing on the lockdown. And in order, people said, number one, that family is important. Number two was having colleagues that care about me as a person. The camaraderie, the spirit of what we're trying to get through. So that was second. Third was people need to appreciate everything, appreciate each other, appreciate what you've got. And fourth was around life's too short. You know, so these were some of the real human things that came out of the survey. So this was nothing to do with work, but this was to do with how we are as a human being. And two of the key things that came out about, is there anything else that your employer should be doing? Number one, by far, was look after our health and well-being and safety. You know, so that sort of came above communication, which communicate. Mike knows all this. Communication has been the number one thing that people don't like working for an employer. But now it seems to be overtaken with this, look after us. We need to know what's going on, of course we do, but look after us and have some sort of policy or charter or pledge, call it whatever you will, to actually tackle this psychological and mental health problem that we're seeing. People are stressed, and it's real, and it's here, and it's today, and it's in Lancashire. You know, so we need to do something. So when you said, you know, talking shop, this isn't a talking shop, this is an action thing. You know, we need to get behind this, and we can't do it on our own, so we need to work together to make sure that this happens. How's that? And I can share that with everyone afterwards. That's not been seen anywhere before.
Thank you so much. I mean, that we talked before about data-driven decisions. That's hot off the press. That's a representative sample. The people are calling out, crying out for some support. We can't just sit here then about a lovely day, have some brownies, and then walk away. If we can come up with as a start of the top 10 checklist within a week. So if you've got ideas, you've all been contacted by Cheryl. Cheryl, without me asking people to spam you, I'm just thinking to play back to one version of the truth. Can you start to, if you wrote something on the top 10 checklist, and that's a checklist for well-being, that can be for your colleagues, that can be for your neighbours. Let's just keep it, let's just see what we get. Let's just see what your crowd thoughts are regarding what you would be on the top 10 checklist. If this were lampposts around Lancashire, would that represent, you know, things for looking out for each other? So if you can put your contenders through to that would be incredibly useful, please. In addition to your other thoughts and your other ideas. Lee, I wanted to say, did you want to? I'm just checking. So, yes, this is not going to be a talking shop. This needs to be a call to action. This needs to be us all under one roof and all heading towards one place, one version of the truth. But that's not going to happen overnight. We need to just start getting some actions to build up the trust so we can start to see how this can shape and how we can move towards a triage, if you will, for the region, but crucially to do what we can to evidence how well-being can be improving for the region. So any final words from anybody, please? I mean, I'm going to pass it over to, I thought Lee had gone. I thought Lee wanted to say a word. Oh, crikey. And I've just drawn a lot of attention to him then, sorry. You've got to check, haven't you, the well-being spirit then. But anybody, any final thoughts? Is everybody, and look, doing hard stuff, getting stuff done, it doesn't have to be anything other than smiles, because we've got a lot in common here.
Yeah, can I just ask a question?
Of course you can.
Do Lancashire County Council or any other councils have health and wellbeing workplace coordinators or health and wellbeing workplace managers within any of the councils? Are we missing people from the council here today or not?
So we've got Andrew Booth.
I'm trying to remember a name.
Pardon?
I'm trying to remember a name.
That's action.
Yeah,
that's action.
She's lovely. She's fantastic. But you've also got the Director of Public Health, Zachary, as well. Not following on Twitter. Get following on Twitter. You want about health leadership.
Yes, I think for me it's about the responsibility of working with the likes of Steve and Stuart to start to channel those messages and actually take responsibility for, you know, a commitment. And I like the idea of some sort of certificate, a bit like the Invested in People, but for schools, you know, health and wellbeing in schools certificate, again, for businesses.
Yeah.
It's just to see that, you know, and we do need, you know, we can't do it all in our room. It's champions within those different organisations to get on board. And, do you know, I think for businesses, Steve mentioned it earlier on, it's about health and wellbeing ambassadors within those organisations that we can channel the information into.
So if there's a Wellbeing Lancashire stamp of accreditation, whatever that may be, and equally, if you don't abide by what good looks like, then you'll not have that accreditation. Is that the kind of thing that you're saying?
Yeah.
And that means
there's so many different pieces. There is so many different pieces of information, you know, in different areas of health and wellbeing. You know, Lancashire County Council might be running one campaign. Blackpool Council might be running a separate campaign. It's about joining all these things, and this is where this overarching role will be to sort of, you know, this is what we are doing, and these are, you know, Linda's mentioned the collaboration. You know, that is what's going to be the big That is all, it's all there in place.
We
It's
have
just that-
over 200 people on our mailing list from organisations across the system. And last year, and I think the year before, Lancs County Council hosted a series of events, wellbeing at work events, that were themed on health topics. So yes, there's definitely some work on.
So even if just knowledge of that gets us to one version of the truth, more, doesn't it? So we've got a common radar. And to those ends then we can start to see where's X the unknown. There will always be X the unknown. So what I want to do now is just to check.
Andrea Smith is the name.
Andrea Smith, there you go. There you go.
Email us and I'll send it over.
Okay, so to conclude, thank you so much for joining us here today. You've got a little bit of a flavour with what we've cobbled together in our 90-day plan, which we're about 75-ish days through. I'm sure I've probably forgot to say a heck of a lot. Celia's passed me a lot of great notes to those ends. What I want to do is just to check with the Wellbeing Lancashire team, because I might well have missed some crucial things. But so grateful for one, for you attending, for your fantastic minds, and also for standing behind us with Wellbeing Lancashire. Cheryl, I'm going to pass you the mic.
Yeah, I think one thing that's been really clear today as well is we've had people from different sectors, from third sector, from public, and from private sector, and I think there does seem to be some kind of disconnect that the private sector doesn't always know what's available within the other sectors, and I think, you know, part of what our ideas are in terms of our vision for Wellbeing Lancashire is to bring that together. So it's not to try and do something that someone else is already doing. If we can kind of bring that together so that it's a one-stop shop that provides the information that everybody needs, then that, you know, we can go out to the people, we can go out to the communities, and we can go out to the businesses. Because I think with, you know, one way that we looked at it was with businesses where they're going through consultancy periods, those are people, and those are people that are in work at the moment, but might not be in work in 6 months' time, and their mental health is going to be affected by that. So how can Wellbeing Lancashire, by bringing everybody together, do that job to stop that happening and to go in the right direction rather than the wrong direction?
Yeah.
Thank you. Lee, anything to add on to that?
Yeah, so I just want to amplify what Cheryl said. I mean, ultimately, when building this roundtable, we curated a list of people who we felt all had vision to see the potential of the future of what we could create if we took action. Also, people who had a passion for well-being, for advancement, and to look at the disadvantages that we have and how those can be potentially look to be driven in a more positive direction. People who are outcome focused, who are not just another provider bringing something to the table, but not really looking at the measurable embedded elements as we look forward. And finally, people who have executed in the past and managed to actually bring programs forward. And we wanted to bring people together from different areas, because a collective why is quite difficult to achieve. Everyone is in wellbeing with slightly different variations. But what has become clear over recent years is that as we look towards becoming Lancashire a digital city, a connected region, we have to be proud of what we are, not always looking out. Best practice can come from elsewhere, but more importantly, we have got so much to give here, so many practitioners here. If we can come up with an aligned strategy that links together the areas where we can get that foundation, that amplification here, by looking at bringing those elements together, I feel that we'll be able to actually create something that other counties across the country and possibly across the world will be a framework for something. And yeah, that is a little bit of blue sky thinking, but when we can actually connect these things together, it's really important. And I just think we've come together very quickly, and we want to keep that mobility and agility that has got us here in this room in less than 3 months. We want to keep that as much as possible, because again, what's been highlighted here is that, for example, Steve doesn't feel like something like this at the moment here.
we have the opportunity to create that, and if we continue to be dynamic with it, we'll be able to create something that really makes an impact.
Thank you, thank you. Emma, Celia, anything to add?
Just to let you know that right from the beginning of getting involved in this Lancashire, in the Wellbeing Lancashire, I spent 14 years in the health service, got up to director level, and I was left because of frustration. Because of frustration in non-stop endless meetings, we never got anywhere. You had to go for a meeting, produce a document, then go to another meeting, produce a document, another, and it was an endless cycle. And the thing that's having my own business and be able to have energy, do something different, do something dramatic, and just get action, and just deliver. And I said to Jay before I got involved with this, if this turns into a bureaucratic exercise that doesn't go anything, and I'm stuck in an endless stream of meetings, I'm just not getting involved. And that's been one of the principles that we've done so far of our work within Wellbeing Lancashire, is that we are very much about action orientated. And actually, if we don't do something out of this, you'll lose the goodwill of an awful lot of people who are already together and are hoping that out of today, it doesn't become a talking shop, but we actually do something and get things moving from today.
Absolutely. Emma, any final words?
Yeah, so just looking at the certification, it's something we've already kind of discussed for organisations, but for businesses. But if you guys could give feedback on what you would look at if somebody was buying into Wellbeing Lancashire, what would they expect from the providers? Because like the topic of wellbeing and the many disciplinaries around health and wellbeing, it varies for providers as well. So kind of what is your benchmark of what you would expect a provider to have if they were coming into your organisation? Just some tips and guidance around that so that we can quickly get that more so for our memberships when we bring other people into Wellbeing Lancashire. We want to make sure that we're following best practice and you know, we're up to date and we're relevant. And going back to what Tali had said about a movement, we've already started that movement. You can follow us on all the social medias. We've got Wellbeing Lancashire on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. So if you can follow us, if you can share it, get involved, that would be really great. And use the hashtag Wellbeing Lancashire. Thank you.
Thank you. Emma, Lee, Cheryl, Celia, incredible from the team perspective. Everybody at Wellbeing Farm, the hospitality has been incredible, has been awesome. Fantastic photography, streaming. Have a safe journey. You're very welcome to join us for a natter while we're sort of packing away and sort of having a brew. So, but thank you so much. Take care of yourselves. And also, if you've got a couple of minutes, you fancy doing a cheeky testimonial. We talked about getting the hashtag out there then. We talked about getting content done. If you fancy knocking up a bit of content, let's get some video testimonials if you'd like. Thank you so much. I'm having a brew.